We are here, as the ticker tape says, because let's accept that this is a very weird world that we're in right now, and we know that people are facing lots of different challenges, and we have some little nuggets of information that we've shared before, but we want to reshare and try apply to what's going on in the world. Is that a fair summation?
Yes, and listen, we've been like Be Well has been doing its thing for a long time, and not least during the last number of months where we've felt that there's a role for Be Well in the turbulent times that we've all been experiencing. So we've had this constant conversation about what else could we do, what more can we do, and to be honest, from my point of view anyway, it feels like going into the winter. We've been like, I would say I'm happy enough with what Be Well has contributed during the COVID scenario, and I think it's added value and it's done its thing, and that's important that we were able to respond. But I do think and we've had these constant conversations about what else, but I feel like now there's kind of a threshold into winter where Be Well needs to just kind of up its game a wee bit, or just be conscious of the fact that it's everything. Just because we've been in this for a while, just because there's other things happening, it doesn't mean that everyone's sorted now. We'll just coast our way to Christmas and into the new year. And so, I think this video and more videos to come are our way of just, kind of just upping the game a wee bit in response to what we see. So hopefully, we've read it right. And what we want to do is, as Grace said, bring back some of the Be Well fundamentals, and build from there.
Yeah, and I think even myself trying to think about, it's a healthy challenge for me if any Be Weller, and we invite people to be Be Wellers. And step one of being a Be Weller is, when you learn something new, is to not just learn it, but to practice it. So I've been trying to think about what I've been practicing during all the different restrictions and all of that, and what I can still do and what works for me. And it's like taking that, those little nuggets of information and beefing them up a little bit. And that's what we're going to try to do. And we decided that one of the best places to start is our favorite tool, or one of our favorites, which is the 5-a-day for your mental health. So, I mean, people probably know the 5-a-day for your physical health, which is your 5 fruit and veg. But a long time ago, we came across this amazing 5-a-day from Headstrong, which was 5 things you can do for your mental health every day. And I think it's been updated and changed now, but we've always held on to our own version of the 5-a-day. And we thought we'd go through that and just see how they can still be done, give examples of each of the 5 things, to spark maybe your imagination on it, and just remind people that tool is there.
And also remind people that there isn't just one way to do all this stuff. So whereas I might be sitting out in the back garden for a 5-minute burst of bird song in the morning as my mindful practice, for someone else it could be going out for a 20-minute jog. Someone else could be sitting out having their coffee. There isn't just one way to do the thing. So we're going to try and introduce the 5-a-day in the broad way, so that you can get a sense of what they are and then find your way within them. We start?
Let's do it.
First one.
All right. Well, this is, and I think personally, one of the hardest ones, which is accept. And like we said there, where you're at and what's happening, because surely, what's happening in 2020, that's been hard to accept, I think, for a lot of people. And we would say that accepting is not just allowing everything to be and saying this kind of, we are powerless within. I've got
a question for you. Do you just accept once and you're sorted? Or is acceptance also a practice?
I think it is a practice, and it doesn't mean that things will always be that way either. So it means accepting where you're at and what's happening. So there's some things you can change and some things you can't. For example, accepting that whatever restrictions are in place are in place. They are our start point. That's what's happening. And accepting that you feel for the moment really frustrated with it. That doesn't mean that you can't transform that frustration into something else. And it doesn't mean that that feeling is there forever. Also, we know the restrictions won't be there forever, or the whatever problems. There's also other things going on day-to-day life that are not to do with COVID, you know, whatever it might be, that's the challenge in front of you. So what do you think?
So because it's also what you made me think of there is that it's like to deny where you're at and what's happening is to not be at a start point. So if there's something going on in my job or in work scenario, whatever it might be that's happening in my life, I might try to avoid it or to dodge what's actually going on and where I'm at with it. And then I'm going to get caught, and it's almost like I'll have taken a wrong turn and not really noticed. And it's delaying the acceptance. Then it makes it possibly more challenging when you do. So the sooner you can, and that's a recognition thing, the sooner you can say, this is like Monday mornings for some people, or I had a rough one last week on the Tuesday. That was really the Monday because of the bank holiday weekend. And it just felt like, you know, when you have that little bit of extra and it kind of reminds you what life is like outside of kind of the grind. So that Tuesday morning just felt like, nah, let's, and like that, the quicker you can say, yeah, I'm feeling dirt today. And I'm struggling with my motivation, you know, and like, that's my start point, to get that out of the way and then decide what next, what can I avoid? What can I dodge? But what really must I do to kind of move from this point to somewhere else?
And can I give a quote that a friend said to me the other day, which was being aware of self-comfort versus self-care. But I think both are applicable here in this. So your self-care, sometimes it might be hard. It's hard to accept what's going on. It's hard to name that I feel like dirt. That's not comfy to do, but it's self-care to do. But don't forget, you can also do your comfort with it. So if I have to journal is how I would do it, a really tough emotion. So I would take out and write down a page on how I'm feeling and what's going on. But I'll always have a cup of peppermint tea, so that when I'm like, I'm going to rip the page out of the uncomfortableness of it, I can stop and have a sip of tea. So that's a kind of a way to manage the challenge of accepting. But you're right, turning away from it and trying to not accept or not look doesn't, you know.
So that's the first one. Second one, connect. And we have kind of framed it, and there's probably a lot more in there, but connect with people, connect with place, connect with things. And it's, so for us in all of our Be Well work down through the years, it's often one that kind of it's kind of comes from left field a little bit when you start to, I find anyway, when I'm talking to students or young people about the power and importance of connection, or when we talk about how we are as a species hardwired for connection, people often think, what? But the more you speak to that, how important it is. And again, sometimes when you contrast connection with disconnection, then connection becomes more clear how real it is, how important it is, and how it nurtures our sense of our place in the world, and who our people are, what our tribe is, and how we ultimately, and again, it's for each of these, there's a practice in there that can help. So the practice of recognizing what's important for you in terms of connection to people, what's important for you in terms of connection to place and things. And if you can, again, recognize that and then nurture it or find a way to, I know we said earlier that connection to place, there might be limitations at any time in your life, depending on what's going on for you. There might be limitations about how you manage your connection or how you nurture your connection or how it can flourish. But it's really, there's something about conscious intention about how we maintain our connections, because when you do it with intention, which is like saying, I am connecting with my people now, I'm going to do it, whether it's a text message, whether it's a voice note, and whether it's a social media comment or a like or something. It can be as deep or as superficial, but when your intention is behind the connecting, then it serves you as well as them. And I think that's where connection can have its really ultimate power.
I so agree, because you made me think of like, and I know the messaging at the moment is, you know, we can still Zoom everyone and all, and that's grand, but that's one method. So for me and you would get on and talk about politics or be well or loads of different things, the world, and that's the nature of our connection, and that means so much to me. And then I would also have a friend of mine who every day will send me funny videos and memes, and that means as much because it's the nature of our connection. So yeah, I think that's, you know, it doesn't look the same even amongst people, and it's to be mindful of that. And what I would say as well is, if you have space for it in this time, try and think, and this is kind of moving on to the third thing, but how can you be a good connector as well? So for example, I know that trying to be a little bit more empathetic if I can, or trying to take a breath before I get frustrated with someone, because people are carrying a lot at the moment. So it being a good connector comes back to you tenfold as well.
Yeah. And the breath is a thing that you can connect with, and that's you can choose to do that in any moment of the day. Again, if you do it with intention and you decide, I'm going to connect with my breath now, or nature, and it might sound fluffy, but I'm telling you, go out, take off your shoes and socks, stand in the grass, connect to the world, feel the energy that comes through that. We've found a newfound love for birds, just because we've got 2 bird feeders in the back garden, and it's like it genuinely feels like you're connected with nature when you're sitting out there, and all the gangs are coming into the garden, they're killing each other to see who gets at the bird feeder, and that can be a thing that's just happening in the background, or you can connect with it. And I think for me, that's a choice. And when you do it consciously and you allow your heart to go into it a little bit, or just to like, yeah.
And you know what? I think it as my crew are connecting with the sea. So sea swimming all the time is a huge thing for a lot of people. And the most me thing ever is, I don't like swimming. I just like the people who swim. So I swim. And well, I swim. I'm like, oh, it's freezing. I don't know. But people really, really are connecting with that. And I have to say, when you go swimming, or even standing on the beach, you don't have to get in when the sun is coming up or the sun is going down, is amazing.
Cold. Yeah. Next one.
The third one. Contribute, to find ways to give. And we've been having really good chats about this, haven't we? Because we were trying to say, how do we, I think people know that you give to someone, you feel good, but there's something about the step before doing that, which is lovely, which is almost self-gratitude and checking in with, what do you have to give? What are your unique gifts? It doesn't have to be that you're going to raise loads of money, although that's one way to do it. It could be that you're really good on the guitar and you're going to sorry, my internet dropped there. You're gonna send out a song to someone that you've played or whatever. So for us, we know that contributing is so good for you as well, and it's also about checking in with what you have to give.
Yeah, and it's really, like, I think at this stage probably scientifically proven to be an asset in terms of your well-being and mental health, that it's that thing about that word I like to use, which is like extroversion. So there's introversion and extroversion, and when you look outside of yourself and you seek out those opportunities to contribute, it does enhances your sense of purpose in life, who you are, gives meaning. And again, it might be difficult nowadays there's less opportunities to volunteer or to be part of something and give something back. And that's why there's kind of find ways that's in there. And I know that even I can zoom it all the way down and think within my own house that I can find ways to give and to contribute, and that's saying that with that whether it's my kids or Susanna here in this house, is there something I can give that will enhance their life for that or that moment, or make things like, with the lads, it's like over the midterm, I made a promise that I would do Dungeons and Dragons with them, and once you put that out there, you've got to honor it, and they're relentless in the ask of, when, or is it tonight we're going to do it? And there's a bit of prep to be done. So my contribution to playing D&D with my kids requires like me to make time to do the prep, kind of build a story, to like all the things. I'm sure there are loads of people out there that know what happens in D&D.
It looks cool, but no idea.
But like genuinely, I get like when we sit down to ultimately play, you could say, well, that's what fathers should do, or that's what parents should do. But when, like, for me, it feels like they deserve it. They're worthy of that contribution. It's a little bit more than just hanging out with them or playing Xbox. And it's something that I think is healthy in terms of using your imagination and kind of having fun times together. So there are ways that you can give kind of in a narrow, zoomed in, as well as in the broad sense. And I think, the last thing I would say is that there are ways to give in the digital world also. And I know that like we're almost at a stage where we've gone through all these waves of the online life where we love it, we hate it, it's functional, it's useful, we don't want to love it anymore because it's stealing our souls. But there are still ways to give in that space as well. And that could be anything from getting involved in campaigns, like whether it's you could sign a petition for something that you believe in, or you can pay attention to what's going on out there.
Yeah, and or the one that makes that I think about is if you see someone putting themselves out there or sharing something that's positive, and you're like, do I like it? Do I comment? Or oh no, I don't want to. Sometimes a comment that, oh, this was deadly, thanks, or a lovely picture or whatever really makes a difference. And you reminded me when you said the intrinsic or external or whatever, I can't remember the words you used, but so for sometimes to contribute, it feels really nice when someone says thank you, but also maybe they won't. So if you think about what do I have to give, and you're really interested in climate change, but at the moment you can't protest, and you're reading about it, but you can't, and then you go and you sign a petition that you really believe in. Maybe no one will notice that out there, but what you've done, that you've checked in with what you have to contribute, and you've done it, and affirm yourself for that, and feel that hit for doing that yourself. You don't need someone out there to recognize what you've given all the time either, because that, if it comes from in here and it, then that's just as good for your well-being.
Very good. Spot on. The next one. Be healthy. Habits for your physical health. So when we first came across the 5 a day, it was really interesting to recognize where, and I guess over time we built that knowledge ourselves in all the work we did with Be Well, but to see the fundamentally important connection between physical health and mental health, that there is no division between the two whatsoever. And again, for some people, there's a kind of, that's a moment of, oh yeah. And then like to explore and develop your understanding of how they connect, both in terms of the chemical journey, like the chemicals that work their way around your body when you're doing physical exercise, but also how you can do that stuff with intention. So I don't do physical exercise. I'm not able to. But what does that mean? That I can't go to the gym and do intense workouts? It does mean that I can't play sports. Yes, that's also true. But can I go for a walk? Yes, of course I can. Can I find a way to do physical health that's within the boundaries of my own health limitations? Absolutely, 1,000,000% I can. But what's really important within all that is, and why we put it in there, is that word habits. And it's like, we just can't understate, and it's hard. Like habits, or it's like when you either something becomes a habit and it just does. Like, so I'll tell you one of my bad habits, which has nothing to do with, like, it is to do with be healthy.
Bad habits.
So
this is like expose.
It is like so when I'm watching TV, I have to eat. Like, and it's
that's
usually
being a human.
Is it? Yeah. So it's chili Doritos and hummus. So if I'm sitting down to watch something and I don't have those, and a cold drink is like a bonus, or maybe that's a necessity as well. But that's a habit. And why I know it's a habit is because if you study how habits operate, there's a trigger in there. So when I sit down and turn on the TV and go into Amazon and Netflix or whatever, the habit happens in my mind. The trigger kicks in to say, now you require your Doritos. Do you have hummus? Where's your cold drink? And that's autopilot. So like the science of habits is that there are conditions and triggers, and they operate in that sense, is that they are autopilot. And so whereas that can be a struggle, it's also an opportunity. So again, people who we know who are in the industry, I suppose, of health and fitness, or supporting people to pursue their health through fitness, they are also very aware of how good habits in terms of physical health are fundamentally linked to your well-being and your mental health. So for us, it's like, it's trying to take that and break it down to its smallest sense, if that's all it's required. So I know that if I don't go for a walk, a lap even of my estate, then I'm not doing anything. But it's not about that, like doing it once or twice and thinking I've done it now, I do not have to think about it anymore. I've ticked the box, Dermot. Don't let it go a week without going for a walk. I've done it, for that's not a habit. Then that's a cheat. And there is there are those thresholds for turning these good practices in terms of your physical health into habits. Taking your vitamins, drinking water. Like, I have to remind myself, I haven't got there yet, even in terms of drinking water. I know it's good for me. I know. But if I don't remember to put the bottle beside me when I start work every day, then it just, I could go the whole day without drinking one drop of water. So it's back to that intention and being conscious about saying, what habits do I want to commit to, and at what level, am I able to commit to them? Because we all, again, have had that New Year's resolution buzz. This is not that. You have to avoid the trap of kind of, I'm going to do this and this and this, and my life's going to change, and it's all in your head. And then when it comes to delivering, you kind of dodge and avoid and cheat by pretending that you're doing it. So,
yeah. And what I would say about those, like, if you pick even 2 healthy habits for your body physically to start, and then you can add a third in 2 months, then that's a challenge. You'll be like, no, I want to do them all now, but that's maybe not sustainable. So it's picking those ones that are sustainable and then building on them. And like, probably with all 5 of these things, but I find with this, like, so running is, as you know, my kind of thing. And when I couldn't run for a month because I had an injury, it was like, what I noticed is, sometimes I don't feel like going for a run. Sometimes the habit is like, and even sometimes after, I don't feel better. But what I do notice is when something happens that's a real challenge, I bounce back faster if I'm in a habit and a routine of running and taking my vitamins. So it's like, we would say, like, building up your life force, so that when the challenge is there, the challenge is still going to be a challenge, no matter how physically healthy you are. But it does help you to bounce back a little bit faster, I think, when you have those habits.
And the last thing I would say about be healthy in terms of physical health is the sleep thing.
Oh yeah.
And it just, like, there's some real deep, deadly stuff if you've got a nerd vibe like I do for a lot of stuff. But sleep science is fascinating. But like, what I take from all of that, even in the most basic sense, is that our bodies will punish us if we don't get enough sleep or good enough sleep. And that's a given. There's no avoiding that whatsoever. And we all, again, we might do a late Friday and a late Saturday, and that's grand, and recuperate on the Sunday. But if you find yourself like multiple nights a week kind of staying up late gaming or doing what you're doing, and not recuperating that, then your body will punish you, and not just in the physical sense, because again, if you're not rested, then your mind will also start getting hazy, and your mood will be affected if your body hasn't been at rest in order for it to recharge, recuperate. You won't even be conscious of it. For some people, they just realize when someone points it out to them, going, "Geez, like you've been off the wall for the last, like, what's going on?" And when you try to investigate and wonder, often it's people realize, I've been not getting sleep. So really don't underestimate how valuable a solid night's sleep is.
And maybe like, because of stressfulness, and it might take, if you're finding you can't sleep, don't stress about it, because the more you do these 5 things, hopefully the 5 a day, your sleep will improve. But like you said, Daisy, like, yes, that's the goal, good sleep, but if it's rest, I remember my mom always teaching me that, okay, if you can't sleep, because I used to panic and I'd be like, oh, I can't sleep, oh my God, what am I going? She was like, that's okay. Lying down and resting is the next best thing. So just do the next best thing in terms of if you can't sleep at the moment, and believe that these habits as they build will help you to get better sleep. And that's the kind of approach.
Power nap. Can't beat a power nap.
You can power nap anywhere. It's impressive.
That's like, I haven't been on a bus. God, I don't know when the last time I was on a bus, but that was I used to sleep on my way in to work in the mornings as well as on the way back. Power naps for life. We're going to the last one of 5 a day.
Yeah.
Be aware of your thoughts and notice their impact.
And our favorite thing to do is when we're doing workshops on the 5 a day in general with young people in real life, is to drop this one and then say, and then not elaborate for a second.
Yeah, when we tell this, especially I love with the 6th class kids,
yes,
where you're telling them you are not your thoughts, and then you tell them how that's true, and then their whole world has just been rocked.
But even with adults too, because they go, hold on, what am I? And then we always ask people to, like, you know, put your hand up if you talk to yourself. And then people are a little bit like, but everyone does. It's either inside your head or out loud if you're me. And it's true, but let's elaborate on this, because it's one of the ones that I think is quite challenging for people, and it takes a bit of time, but we would also say really, really important not to ignore. So it is about that. It's about that dialogue in your head that we all have, and recognizing not only that it's going on and listening to it, but realizing that it's not all facts either, that it's ongoing stories that we tell ourselves, and noticing how they impact the way that we behave, what we believe, our mood. And one of the tools that we would use to formalize getting used to this kind of stuff is mindfulness, right? And I remember when I first heard about mindfulness, I cringed and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. That's for like people up a mountain or something. I don't know. And then you told me that you practiced it, and I was like, oh, maybe it's, and I gave it a go. And it is, in the simplest sense, connecting with your breath and then watching thoughts as they go by, because they will. And that's the step of it's like putting a little bit of distance between yourself and the story in your head. Am I getting it anywhere?
Yeah. And I think it's like when we like it's always that moment where, yeah, when we say to people, so this, think about something, but then watch what you're thinking about and recognize it, and then you tell them, so you were doing two things at once there. So you're not your thoughts. If you're able to watch your thoughts or be aware of them, then they're not you. They're separate to you, and then you have to pick people up off the floor. But I think when we think about, and the word impact is in there again for a reason, is that notice the impact of your thoughts. So when we did one of our graphics, like the pandemic mind, it's that cycle of, I can't handle this. So if you're telling yourself, I can't handle this, that's a thought that's happening in the moment, and it will have an impact on your behavior. It'll have an impact on your mood. It'll have an impact in the moment. And then it's what you do next, or what you do with that thought. And maybe, yeah, like we would say, you'd sit with it without judgment, and then see where it's coming from, perhaps, or just sit with it. And again, don't deny it, accept it. And then get to the point where you can make a choice about what you're going to do next. And that you do that again with intention. Say, all right, this, like, it's me saying I can't deal with this means what? So it like, am I tired? Am I overwhelmed? Or is there something going on at the moment? Is like, and then when you start kind of wondering where that's coming from, you can also wonder about what can I do about that? Do I need to connect? You know, I've done acceptance. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. This is what my thoughts are. I'm noticing them. And yeah, maybe they are passing or recurring. But if I accept that, and then it's about kind of like maybe thinking about, what choices do I have now? Do I just wait till they pass because maybe that's inevitable, or can I purposefully do something to encourage them on their way, or to be sure that I'm ready for when they do pass, or that I'm putting my scaffolding in place to make sure that this thought doesn't become debilitating, or that it doesn't kind of latch on and hold on to me so that I can't then shift or move. So yeah, for us, it's like just being aware, and it's like when we deny them, when we ignore our thoughts, or when we don't speak them out loud to ourselves in our mind, they will take on a life of their own. And at the moment, in this time of like unprecedented time of absolute uncertainty, our thoughts are on the rampage in there, because it's like, how do you prepare and plan for, like what I've been using recently, this concept of what's around the corner. And usually when we are planning our future or our lives, whether it's someone in school who's heading for leaving cert, or going off out to college, or someone pursuing a career, or someone who's, whatever you're doing, that you're gauging what's, like, I have an idea of how things will pan out because I know what happens in the world, and I have a sense of what's around the corner, but I'm not completely, I don't see it as clear, but I can prepare for it, because all the things will help me to have an idea of that, because most of life is standard, but at the moment it isn't. So to plan or to prepare yourself for what's around the corner, for some people is like, how do I do that? I don't know how my life is going to be, how my health's going to be, how my finances are going to be, what career options are. Is everything going to change in the jobs market? Will I ever be able to travel? All the things are just uncertainty off the chart. And as thoughts, then, if I'm saying all those things, I don't know if I'll ever be able to travel again or go on holiday. Or for me, travel is also work. So that's off the table. I don't know, when I've been in Dublin city centre, and again, minor thing in one sense, but again, for me, work is there. But there's all that I don't know. And what's difficult then is, how do I prepare for uncertainty to that scale? And I think that's something that, like, that can turn into so many different thoughts that can really weigh you down then, because you have to carry them with you. If they're recurring, or you can't process them one way or another, then yeah, they become a burden that you have to carry. So for us, there's different ways of coming at it. That sometimes it's about, you're noticing the impact, and then you go, now I'm going to notice the thought, the impact is happening, your mood has changed, you're getting emotional about something, and you're like, where is this coming from? And we would say, if you're aware of your thoughts, you might find where it's coming from. It might be from there. And then you've got all your evidence in place. Your impact is real. It's affecting you. You're looking for the evidence of that. Sometimes it's in there. Sometimes it's not. It's out there somewhere else.
And like, it's not about, this is not be aware. So this is be aware of your thoughts, notice their impact. This is not change your thoughts and manage your thoughts, because you can't. So one of my favorite things is, like, if I say, do not think of a purple elephant, like, what's the first thing that comes to your brain? It's also possible to have two thoughts at once. So I remember, like, before, when I was a kid, this is the most on-brand story, but me and my dad used to argue, because he said that men were stronger than women. And I was like, no, sir, we're about to have an argument, right? And yet that is not a fact. That is just an idea that men are stronger than women, but you could say all the evidence and the physical differences and so the reality is a lot more complex. But the impact of that thought, if I just thought always men are stronger than women, that's it, and that frustrates me, and I'm not looking at all of the bigger picture. So sometimes it's about the thought and zooming out, and you can hold conflicting thoughts at once. So you might think, the thought is, I can't deal with the pandemic. And you notice that you're saying that to yourself. And then you set the intention of, I'm also going to say, okay, that is not a fact. Maybe I can deal with this. So you're thinking two things at once. But that's a fundamental shift, rather than not even knowing that you're saying, I can't deal with this in the first place. And I know that sounds really meta, but if the same song was playing every day on the radio in the background as you worked, the longer it went on, the more you'd be like, that song needs to turn off. It's wrecking my head. And thoughts are similar. So it's about having a practice of being aware of them, and then having a little bit maybe of influence on how much they affect you or not. And it takes big practice, and that's why we said mindfulness at the start is one tool of doing it. Could be journaling, sometimes talking out to some people. Sometimes if you're having difficulty with a particular thought, there's lots of different ways. Yoga, finding your way of noticing the thoughts. But the impact, I think, once you learn that, is like, what? So those, right, Daisy, those are our 5 a day for a kind of for your well-being in turbulent times, as our little news banner says down the bottom. Have you any final thoughts yourself?
No, I was going to say maybe they're not so turbulent for, again, that's something that's depends on your own circumstances. Maybe, yeah, they're full chaotic turbulence for some, and maybe they're manageable turbulence for others. But I think for us, we wanted to just recognize that changes are happening, or we're in the middle of something that's unprecedented, and that's okay. It's real. And I suppose, yeah, there's still always, until we don't have options and choices anymore about how we can respond. And we do that thing about responding and reacting as well, that we would differentiate the two. Reaction is something that is kind of more caveman brain, whereas respond is kind of integrated brain, where you're considering and you're conscious of your response. And the more you can get into that space, the more then that you can make decisions that will benefit you or benefit those around you.
I think so. And I think it's being gentle with ourselves and knowing that there are many options, a menu of choice of how to look after your well-being. And the most important thing of all is that you create your own, and then set the intention of implementing it every day to build your life force from now for 2020 or whatever other year, because you don't know when you're going to need that well to draw off. But for one thing's for certain is that life will have challenges and you will need it. So it's a practice now of building it up so that we can handle it.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope it was useful.